why was Southside Crips suspects in Biggie's murder?
Again, as the theory began to be developed that there was money owed as a result of Tupac's shooting in Las Vegas, and that they were there to collect money. They weren't getting the money that had been agreed upon. This is the theory. And that they retaliated by shooting Biggie because they weren't collecting.
Can you take me through the Biggie case? Mm-hmm. How everything happened with the story behind solving Biggie's case?
Yeah, so after Las Vegas happens, of course, Suge Knight ends up getting his probation revoked and goes back to prison. So now he's in jail. 6 months have gone by since Tupac's shooting. Tupac obviously dies on the 13th. And the rumor starts to go out that what happened in Vegas, maybe Biggie had a hand in it. He provided the gun, he'd hired these Southside Crips, he was in Vegas. It was all erroneous information, but again, this is rumors that happen on the street that people then begin to accept as truth. And so Keefe D and his crew are distancing themselves completely from the likes of Puffy Combs because they all know that they've potentially been in this murder conspiracy together. The feds are breathing down everybody's necks. Law enforcement's all over the place asking questions, so everybody's just trying to lay low. Well, 6 months goes by, and Puffy and Biggie and all of them come out to Las Vegas, and they're thinking everything's calmed down. Suge's in jail, Tupac's dead, and they're just trying to, continue, with their music and their promotional stuff. And so they came out here with a false sense of security, and they ended up at the Peterson Auto Museum. Unbeknownst to them, Suge Knight is already plotting to retaliate. So he gets a girl that he can trust to act as an intermediary, as a messenger, because he's in jail. She visits him in jail. They have a discussion. He says, "This is what I want done. Reach out to this dude who I know will do it." And she does just that. She secures a payment, and the three of them conspire to shoot and kill Biggie. The night of the shooting, Wardell Faust, the hitman, shows up, lays in wait, and ultimately shoots and kills Biggie.
Okay. Poochie, right? Mm-hmm. And is there any evidence that anybody else was involved?
There's no evidence that anybody else is involved other than the three of them. However, there's a reasonable idea that maybe there was another person that would have helped to set him up. But we just don't know. We don't have the evidence to support that allegation or claim. But it's likely somebody else was acting as a spotter and helping Poochie get the right guy at the right time.
Okay. Is there anything you left out of the book or the documentary that that you might have left out for legal reasons or to protect people or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm sure there was probably some names that I avoided putting on blast. That book was published 9 years ago, and I haven't read it since, so I don't exactly know what I said in there. The documentary was 2015, so I haven't watched that since that period of time. So I couldn't say for sure what I've omitted or should have included at this point.
How much was the payment for Biggie?
According to the female that acted as the messenger, she mentioned a $25,000 agreement. That was also a number that another death row person had heard. So that's what we believe to be true, that there was like a $25,000 agreement to get Poochie and the female bought off in order to accomplish what Suge needed done.
Oh, okay. And how'd you get her to cooperate?
Same thing we did with Keefe D, just put her in a position where it was in her best interest to cooperate. We were gonna charge her with a bunch of counts of perjury, fraud, and take her kids away, put them in foster care, and create just problems for her life if she didn't sit down and tell us what we wanted to know.
Okay, and what did you guys do? You guys
Yeah, I drafted up this fictitious statement that was, well, we introduced it as a statement by Wardell Faust, by Poochie himself, and used it as a ruse kind of to see whether or not she would bite, which she did. And so it was just kind of a mind play that we incorporated into the interrogation.
Okay, and she opened up right after that, and
Yeah, she read it and she said, what Poochie said was true. So she agreed with what we had written and what we had believed took place. So it confirmed to us that we were on the right track. And then she spills, the rest of the story. She fills in the details as to, insofar as her involvement and what she did, her conversations with Suge, and that type of thing.
Okay. And would Suge ever be charged with this?
No.
How come?
Again, goes back to a credibility issue. Teresa Swan, who's got this long history of perjury, she's got a long history of fraud, and there's a relationship between them with a kid, and so all of these things, these dynamics, come into play when you try to prosecute somebody and take him into court. A good defense witness hired by Suge would eat her alive, just like a good defense lawyer for Puffy would eat Keefe D alive. So prosecutors understand how these dynamics will play out in court and realize like this would just be a shit show. And so without better evidence, without better witnesses, there's no point in even pursuing it.
All right.
The reality for both of these cases, and what I believe is the appropriate responsibility for law enforcement, or the response by law enforcement, because everybody knows this is the case. Within law enforcement, we all know these are the facts and the details of these cases. And just for the sake of history, law enforcement, both Las Vegas and LAPD, should just clear the cases. If these guys weren't celebrities, these would have been cleared long ago. These would have been cleared the moment we got the confessions. But because of the celebrity status of these and all of the accusations against law enforcement that have taken place over the years, they're very reluctant to take that step. But that would be, in my opinion, the right thing to do, is just clear these cases under mitigating circumstances. You don't have to prosecute people in order to clear cases.
What does clear the case mean?
Meaning that you come out and you say, for all intent and purpose, these are solved cases, but they're unprosecutable. Even Biggie's estate's lawyer said the same thing. He said these are not unsolved cases. Perry Sanders himself, who was the representative of the Wallace estate, or the lawyer for the Wallace estate, those were his words. These are not unsolved, they're unprosecuted. And I agree wholeheartedly with that statement and that position, and law enforcement ought to come out and go, listen, we know the facts and the details, they're strong, there's compelling evidence to suggest these are the facts, and we're gonna clear them. And the other thing about that is that even if they do, if they clear them and somehow information comes in at a future date, they can always reopen cases. They can always apply new evidence, new information, and new facts to a case. Considering the case is solved doesn't preclude you from revisiting them should there be a need to do that. So I think for the sake of these two individuals in their place in history, they should not go down as unsolved murders, because they're not. We know what happened conclusively and definitively, and we ought to, that ought to reflect.
So you believe they don't because of the celebrities?
I think they don't, just because it's easier to not revisit this issue. It keeps it out of the public's eye. There's a large, obvious audience of people that are Tupac or Biggie fans or hip-hop historians or whatever. But law enforcement doesn't care about that community insofar as pleasing them or satisfying their desires. Law enforcement just wants to let this whole thing stay where it's at, which is to not bring attention to it. And, to resurrect these cases publicly, really what's it going to do? It's going to inflame all the people that are like, nah, fuck this, the LAPD was involved in that, and this is just their way of covering it up. It's just going to exacerbate a situation that is at right now, no one's paying attention to.
I see.
So it's just a political decision to not ruffle any feathers or kick the sleeping dog.
Yeah. How did Biggie? So you went and talked to Biggie's mom after you solved the case?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What did she think?
Well, it was a very emotional thing because I think that at one point she had to come to the realization that her beliefs were wrong and that she pursued and spent a lot of time and energy and money pursuing a theory that was ultimately refuted. And so I think that obviously, I think that would cause you to have a sense of just uneasiness or regret. It's like, damn, that was a lot of energy and heartache. And then knowing that even though now you know the truth, even though you have the facts and the evidence, no one's going to do anything about it. So it's a lose-lose. So I think for her, for Valletta Wallace's sake, that wound will never heal.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you taking the time, man.
Pleasure. Absolutely. No worries.